Paddington in Peru is directed by Dougal Wilson and is the third installment in the Paddington franchise. In this film, Paddington gets an invite from Aunt Lucy to visit her at the home for retired bears in Peru. But when he and the Brown family turn up, she isn't there. So they must go on a mission in Peru to find her. Like most people, I love the Paddington movies. Now, I do have the controversial opinion that the first one is better than the second one. I think the first Paddington is a masterpiece. It's extremely funny. It's so heartfelt. I love Paddington 2 as well. I think that movie is fantastic. And it has one of the best villains in recent memory with Hugh Grant. So there was a lot Paddington 3 had to live up to. If Paddington 3 ended up being great, we'd be talking about the Paddington trilogy as one of the greatest trilogies of all time. And there was a bit of a worry because Paul King, the writer and director of those two films, is not returning. First off, it is impossible to not love this bear. He is just so charming to watch. And just like the other films, he is easily the most positive character in these movies. So just to watch that play out is very endearing. When it comes to the humour, there's a fair bit to like in Paddington in Peru. I laughed at a number of gags, and there are a couple of gags, one in particular, you'll probably know what it is when you see the movie, where I was like, oh, they went there, okay. Just because of the nature of this character, it's really hard not to root for him. That does create for some sweet and heartfelt moments. As I mentioned in my intro, one of my big worries going into this film was that Paul King wasn't returning. This film is the directorial debut of its director, Dougal Wilson. I will say, you can tell Paul King didn't direct this movie. There are some ideas here that feel very distinct to another director that isn't Paul King. And in some aspects, I do think that's very good. It does kind of bring something we haven't seen before. But when it comes to the overall story, there are definitely decisions I feel Paul King wouldn't have made. Antonio Banderas is in this film, who plays a treasure hunter. And I think the film spends far too much time on his character. Now, I will say they do try to give him a backstory and some character development, but ultimately, I did not care. And the reason I did not care is because whenever the film was trying to develop his character, it was just taking away from development from any of the other lead characters. So even though he's giving a great performance and they do try to give him something, whenever he's on screen, it's like, no, get back to everything else. And that is another issue, is that the Brown family especially don't really feel that developed. There are hints of a theme between them all, but it's only ever really mentioned at the beginning and then they just try to pay it off at the end. There's nothing in between that. And I will say, I think the ending is rather sweet, but this movie does feel like it has about 5 endings. Overall, I enjoyed my time watching Paddington in Peru. It is funny, it is sweet, but it is missing that magic from the first 2 movies. I do think it is easily the weakest of the trilogy, and because of that, I don't know if we can put this Paddington trilogy in the conversation of the greatest trilogies of all time. Still, if you enjoy these movies, I'd still definitely recommend giving Paddington in Peru a shot. I'm going to give Paddington in Peru a B. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. You guys are awesome. Blu-ray Billy, logging off.